Hey again, everybody. So today I want to talk about a quote from a book that I'm reading right now. I'm reading We Who Wrestle with God by Jordan Peterson. And I included just one of the sentences from the full quote at the beginning here that says, "We perceive, therefore, in accordance with our aim," which is also the title of the video. But the full excerpt here is: "This is the map we use to guide our navigation through the unknown territory in which we would otherwise be lost. We perceive, therefore, in accordance with our aim. That is a remarkable and insufficiently heralded realization, implying, as it does, nothing less than that both our misery and our joy depend on our values." I've been thinking about this recently because I've just had a few different things happen with a few different interactions with people, mostly at work. And, most people that I work with or that I'm around on a day-to-day basis, I would say are pretty decent people and are very nice and generally have the good intention or have good intentions for those around them, including me. But, there's a few people where that's not necessarily true, and I was reading this quote and just maybe really think about also how how much intention does affect what we perceive and thus how we act, and but I think that perception part is a huge thing, and I've made this analogy a few times on this channel, but if you think of the color red, you're going to things that are red are gonna pop out at you more. Like if you only think about the color red and you're outside and you're driving, you're gonna notice red cars more often, and this is just a good analogy to make for a lot of things. But with our perceptions and with our values, I think it's very important because we are perceiving in accordance with what we're aiming towards. And so what we're aiming towards, if we're not aiming towards something that is good or is virtuous, then we're going to perceive things that align with that value. And so if, for example, if I'm going to school to, do what I am doing, which is to be a game director or to be a 3D modeler, then I will perceive and consume things kind of through that lens, where I will watch a film and I'll think, oh, they probably used this software to make that character model, or they use this to do those VFX, and that's just how I think. And people around me can attest to me doing that because I've watched a ton of a ton of films where I'll say afterwards, oh, I'm pretty sure that they use this software to do that, and because I'm thinking about it through that lens. If I wasn't aiming towards that being my job, I wouldn't think about that. I wouldn't perceive it in that way. And so, in a more general sense, if we're aiming towards being a good person, I think we're going to perceive more things as being good, or that we're going to perceive more things as an avenue towards us becoming a better person. And that if we're aiming towards things that, on a surface level we think is good, because I don't think that there's anybody that intentionally thinks I'm aiming towards something bad, but that on a surface level they can seem good, but that underlying that they really aren't. And when those things are there, then our perceptions of a lot of things can be warped in the same way. And this I think pertains heavily to kind of like modern day values, and how much of a split that there is between people nowadays with values, and what determines them, and what is the politically correct way to say things, or that there's only one right way to be saying things. And so keeping in mind though that we're going to see things in the way that we kind of want to see them, or we're going to see things through the way that we're going to like would be seen on the path that we're on. And that if you are going towards being a good person, you're naturally going to fall into those ideologies and those beliefs that are going to get you closer to that. And so that is also to say to trust your instinct, that if you instinctually think that this is a good thing, and I have already done these other things that I think have made me better, feel the same about this thing, it's probably going to benefit me. And so, as an example, with me, in high school, I got really into philosophy, and particularly Stoicism. And Stoicism has kind of been like almost a meme, like on and off, where like people will kind of talk about it in a negative connotation, or say that it's it's the red pilled way to look at things, or like it's kind of tied in with kind of like the alpha male, like not feeling or not caring about things, which isn't really what it is at all. If you do any amount of research into what the actual core pillars of Stoicism are, you would know that that's not true, and that's kind of the dramatized version of it that is often shown. But that was a thing though that got me into more deep thought generally, and got me into actually reading more and reading older texts, and really getting me into really what I'm doing now, which is thinking. And so that was kind of a stepping stone that was beginning to change my perception, because I was aiming towards being better, and so I was naturally trying to find things that would make me feel like I was getting closer to that goal. And learning Stoicism and learning about older philosophies was one of those things. And so nowadays, even though I don't fully align myself with any kind of one way of thought, that when I have that feeling of this is giving me that same instinctual good that researching Stoicism, or anything else that I feel that this is a thing that will benefit me, then I'm more inclined to trust myself that is true. And when it's not true, you kind of figure that out pretty quick. And I think we figure those things out most quick when it is very obvious to see how other people who have followed that ideology, how they've ended up. And so if you have like a group of friends and they all think that this one particular band growing up is the best thing ever, and that's all you guys ever talk about, and but maybe the band it has a few songs, has a few lyrics that are kind of spreading a not great message, but you just kind of ignore that, and because it's a great band, and all your friends like it, so you have to like it too. But then you grow up and you get older, and you naturally fall away from those friends, and you kind of look back on that band, and you think, man, like some of the things that they were saying there weren't really that great, were kind of hateful, or kind of negative. And then you check in on those friends now, and they're not doing great. They did XYZ, and they're not in a great spot now. And so that is to say that there are going to be people who follow and align themselves with this thing that you may think is good because it is so popular, or because I trust this person, so they must be right, so it must be a good thing, or I feel good when I listen to this stuff too because it kind of gives me a temporary boost in confidence, or whatever way that you may feel at that time. But then you kind of realize later that it really wasn't as great as you thought it was, and it was actually kind of hurting you. And then you can see the proof of that in the people that continue to follow that. And so overall, that's just a analogy for the fact that just because a thing is popular doesn't mean that you need to follow it, and doesn't mean that it's right, but also that, like, you're going to follow a thing that you perceive in that moment to be bringing you towards something better, whether that be more popular or whatever that your goal is. And so I just think that this is a good thought to have every once in a while, and especially when you're getting into something new, of what are my initial thoughts on this thing, and if my overall goal is to be a better, more virtuous person, is this something that is bringing me closer to that, and why am I perceiving it in that way? And yeah, so I just thought that this was a really cool thing to think about, and really makes you think about how different each person's worldview is, and how much that is based on their own experiences, and that we don't have any control over other people's experiences. And that's kind of the whole point, really. And so yeah, so we will always perceive in accordance with our aim. And so it's good to just make sure that we're aiming towards something good, because everything else that we will perceive as we aim towards that thing will also be good or not, so yeah, just kind of cool thought to have. And yeah, it's been a long week. It's been a very tiring week, a little bit of a rough day on Monday. I got into a little bit of trouble at work. I do weekday and weekend shifts, and on the weekend shifts it's pretty slow, and so I kind of will just sit around more than I should. So I got spoken to about that. It wasn't like a huge deal, but yeah, so I gotta try to stay on my feet more, but I'm all good. And yeah, summer thus far has been not too bad. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so this past week has been rewatching Star Wars and, being hyped with all the May the 4th celebrations and stuff. So yeah, but that's all I have for you guys for today. So I'll see you guys in the next one.